Primarily because we are navigating or negotiating with our 3-year-old grandson, our wonderful milkers, and our fantastic waters. So that's quite an exercise, trying to negotiate with a 3-year-old boy that milk and water is the best for him. Although I manage to kind of, when I run out of entertainment tools, it's the hot chocolate that I go to, so excuse me for the hot chocolate. But, Kio Tenako, hey, Mario, Namaste, Salam, and Fatalo Fatu, Marco, Lisa Corabinata, and Queens. So thank you for the opportunity for asking me. I hope the last time I was here, somebody called me, this is the house of the miracle. Apparently it's health and nutrition. So I hope you're having a great heart to produce a miracle today. They are all going to unite and say, yes, do everything that you say. I see that I'm called moderator, but you know, as a real Samoan chief, and I'm not an appropriate chief, moderation is not part of my DNA. so I'm going to be a real chief and make sure that when I say 90 seconds, actually means 90 seconds. Okay, but I hope you're going to have some fun today. So the rules are very simple, and the rules are primarily to constrain them to make sure they say all the things you want them to say. Okay, so basically there are 3 policy questions, I think. One is about water-only schools, and the other is about compulsory labeling of sugary drinks. And I think the third one is the levy on sugary drinks. So they're very simple, very straightforward, and I thought they're very easy to implement. Don't you agree?
Yes, yes.
Just a declaration, I'm not being paid for this role, so you need to think I'm promoting the physically. No. So I will ask each one of them, one of those who will take a sequence of those questions. I will ask each one of our politicians here today to declare their position. And they will get about 60 or 90 seconds, depending on how good it is. And then I will say a few things. And then, of course, that will move on to the 3 questions. And after about 25 minutes, I think, or 30 minutes, and then we'll room for all of you to ask questions. And if the media is here, please feel free to ask questions. And I'll be very generous today, and I'll be very nice. Okay, so the first question for us today is water-only schools. Can I now ask and welcome Dr. Shane Rettig from the National Bank.
Kia ora. My name is Shane. I am the MP for Whangarei. Pleased to meet you all today. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for being here today. Kia ora mai tātou, ngā mai tēnei whare o tēnei iwi tēnā. Our position on water in schools is that in government we are supportive of water in schools. We remain supportive of water in schools. What we do say is that that decision is for the Board of Trustees and for the school. So we don't think it's a government decision to make other than to indicate support for that. And we have a track record for that support, and in our hands that support will continue if we're privileged to the government in the upcoming election. So we've already supported water in schools, we'll continue to support it, it resonates for us, it's pretty simple for us. Yes?
That's very brief. I want to get my hand short. From the Green Party.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tāna palawa, it's really wonderful to see you all. The Green Party supports water-only policies in schools and extending that to other institutions where we believe government should be leading by example, like hospitals, and why not sports clubs, where kids are spending a lot of time. Again, similar policy in the sense that government needs to put in the resources to go out and campaign and support the campaigners so the organizations understand what water-only policies mean, and so they feel motivated to buy into it and adopt it for their organization. And we will resource that. And we're not confused about what water-only and sports clubs mean, even though the leader of the opposition was trying to say that it meant something quite different, like no coffee for adults or no licensing in sports clubs. That's rubbish. And the Green Party would never ever campaign by lying about other people's policies.
Please welcome Dr. Ben Wiley-Van from Top.
So thank you very much for your invitation to be here today. My name is Ben Wiley-Van. I am the South candidate for the Opportunities Party. And I'd just like to very briefly, before I answer the question, congratulate the organisers of this event. You've managed to put together a political panel which not only includes voices from scientific experts, but which has put them front and centre at the beginning and core of this event. And I think that's really, really great. Congratulations over to you. The Opportunities Party position on water-only schools is that in 2017, when we formulated our policy to begin with, we said we want to make sure that every public school, hospital, other public areas have a healthy eating policy. We are today happy to say that we do support this water-only schools on the recommendation of the groups and the researchers that have recommended it today. So yes, we will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to change the rules a bit as I can. Do you want some questions for that particular policy decision by the three? Any particular questions now? Boyd.
So can I just ask Dr. Retty, this voluntary approach has been in place for several years now, and if you had evidence that it wasn't working, that plenty of schools still don't have water-only policies, would you consider making that mandatory?
No, we wouldn't consider it making it mandatory because we back parents, we back schools, and so we think we provide them with the right information and they provide parents with the right information, then collectively as a community they'll make that choice. Intrinsically we're government alike, where we need to be like, but fundamentally we'll back teachers, we'll back parents, so no, we wouldn't make it any different.
Even if it doesn't work?
We back teachers, we back parents.
So what's the evidence around that, Shane?
The evidence around backing parents and teachers. Well, that's just the right thing to do. I mean, we trust you. You know your children better than us, and while we understand that the science base needs to anchor and support some of this, we'll still back it. Actually applies to immunisation as well, for what it's worth. We'll back parents and teachers who should know their students better, who should have their interests first at heart, and I believe they do. We'll back them to make this decision. We don't see government stepping over the top of that.
Okay, anyone? Yes?
Given that it's the public that pay when we have diabetes epidemic that is now going on, how can you then stand here and say, oh, it's just the choice of the parents, when it's the whole country that ends up paying the cost of dental decay at $4,000 an extraction for a child? So to me, it's not, you have this thing about personal choice, but when we've got major responsibility to the whole country, it's not just about individuals. And the fact that we've got kids having 10 teeth extracted, it doesn't actually tell you that the parents are necessarily making the right decisions.
Yes, and I wouldn't dispute that, but what I would say, I believe that if we put the best information in front of parents and supported them, then they'll make the right choice. And there is that, I agree, that balance between the rights of the individual and the community goods, the collective goods. I understand that, but I would still come back and say I will back the parents and I'll back the schools to make the right choice. They are closer and have the greater interest than we do here in Wellington. I'll continue to back them.
Julianne, do you have a comment to add on this?
I think we should do what the evidence says, and if there was really strong evidence that we needed to go further, then we would support that. But I think that for the moment, the water-only schools policy has been really effective. It just needs more resource, and like everything in our public health system, we need to have the resource to be able to support it. And So this would bring us beyond just this policy to say the Green Party believes we need to increase resourcing to our health system, to our public health system, to all of the external things that affect public health, like income inequality and housing. And in order to do that, we need to take some very bold steps in terms of making our tax system fair, raising revenue from the wealthiest New Zealanders, and putting it into those public services that benefit us all.
Ben, you've got a couple of
Yes, I'd just like to ask Dr. Ritty, do you think the fact that, the children are showing up and having teeth removed implies that the parents believe that that's what's best for those children?
No, I think what it suggests is that that can be well supported with education and opportunities if we do a better job there. I back them and believe them that they'll make a choice that I think this room is wanting to make. That's what I think. Can I also point out we're not in government? Just saying, decision making and the levers of government are not actually with us here. So this is a great policy, but there are others here in this room who are actually in government.
You're not convinced, Shane, yet?
Not convinced. Oh, absolutely convinced that your policy has been our policy and continues to be. We'll support the school towards that without doubt.
Okay. One more question from on this particular one? I'll go to the back here.
Furthering that question, it's great that the National Party wants to address those social determinants of our children's parents' decisions, so education and giving them the resources, but that's quite a slow solution. And children right now having their teeth pulled out in 5 years' time, 10 years' time when their parents are maybe better resourced and more educated, their teeth are going to fall out by now. So what is your solution to help kids right now who need it?
Yeah, that's a valid point. It's a valid point. It's a slow shift. Many things in health are a slow shift. It takes a long time to change, so I absolutely agree with you. Having said that, you've got to start somewhere. And I think with the water owners school is a good starting point. I think there are many other things you can wrap around that, and I don't think we have the ability to go into other determinants of health, which are also slow shifts very generally. But somewhere you've got the prevention of disease, and then you've got the treatment of it, reluctantly the treatment of it, the ambulance, if you like. And I think how we apply ourselves and apply resources, which is what Julianne was talking about, to that is a complex problem. It's a hard problem. But I agree with you, it's a slow shift, but I'd also say you've got to start somewhere. And there's a school starting somewhere, and it's not actually starting now. Just point out in 2015, our childhood obesity program talked about water-only schools. So it's been a slow percolator. It probably is still a slow percolator, and relies on others in this room to also raise their voice and say the same.
Sorry, you don't ask the question. Well, we'll go to the principal.
Just a voice from the floor from schools. Teachers and principals are overloaded. There are so many demands on their time. There are so many priorities. If this was legislated, or it would just be so easy. Hero would come around every 3 years, be a compliance checklist, and you could tick the box. Because it's just not necessarily going to be forefront for all overloaded schools, teachers, principal boards. So, I vote to legislate for it.
Okay.
Can I just ask Julianne, with the support that's obvious from the Greens and the Labour, what's been the barrier to getting that across the line? And I think we've been talking about it for some time.
Well, since this is a political panel, I will give you my political answer is not enough Greens in government. Because, I think that we could go much further and faster in the next term of government and see real progress on a range of issues, including some of the other policies that have been presented to us today, like a sugary drinks levy, which is something I've advocated since before the last election. There wasn't support for that amongst all three parties of the government, but the Greens have it in our health policy in our manifesto, and it will be a priority for us because we have to take action on this.
I just want to ask, was your policy driven by parents or did the school initiate?
I think initially it was driven by the early principal, as Lisa referred to. I think from a parent's point of view, too, as a parent, I would be so happy if my children are older now, but if they had made this policy, even if it was legislation, because I want my children to drink water, drink milk, and not sugary drinks, but if it's a rule at school, easy. It's still do it. You know, the stress, families, children, community, so much going on. Again, it's probably not a priority, but let's make it easy for everybody.
So you follow the science and initiate it, and the parents follow through and support you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, let's move on. Any more question on water on schools? Okay, the second one is compulsory labeling of sugary drinks. We'll start with you, Levy.
Once again, this is a big yes from the Opportunities Party. We've had a policy since 2017 that we want to have more clear front-of-label packaging, not just for sweet drinks or for drink products, but actually across the packaged food options. So big yes from this one. We would go even further, but once again, this is a brilliant starting point, and I particularly like about this policy that's been presented today, the clarity that's been emphasised about it, and also the fact that the need for a public information campaign to go along with it has been emphasised, because that is part of the tool being more effective. So very much in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia?
Yes. I feel like I should leave more time for just answering questions, but yes.
Thank you. So we put in place the 5-star labelling regime, which has sugar as one part of that labelling. So you can see our intentions there. Now, initially it was auto-regulated, it was voluntary, and I think what we've seen is we'll be looking to extend that, but just so you can see our indications and our interest in that, we brought in that labelling protocol because we believe that it's useful, we believe that it's a behaviour changer, that people can actually see sugar content, salt content, nutrients and the others that we have in there. We think it makes a difference, so we took some actions with that.
Okay, can I ask you about that question on compulsory labeling?
Sorry.
Can I ask you about your party's position on compulsory labeling?
Yes. In fact, if you look at the Green Party food policy, food should be safe, healthy, affordable, and cruelty-free. People have a right to know about their food choices, and labeling standards should accurately tell people where their food comes from, what's in it, how it was produced, its national nutritional value, and its environmental impact. And sugar is something that needs to be front and center, and we need much more support going to education campaigns so that people understand exactly how damaging, particularly things like sports drinks, can be to their health. Because they are marketed as though they are nutritious and important for health when they're the exact opposite.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's also open up for some questions on that particular policy. Any takers on the position?
So just a question for Shane. The health star ratings, in my view, support, endorse people to eat sugary products. So, for example, breakfast cereals. There's many breakfast cereals that are 25% sugar, and yet they get a 4 or 4.5 star rating. Do you see that as a problem?
So the early evidence with the star rating system, and certainly the scientific evidence that led us to bring it in, suggested it would have impact and that it would be beneficial. I am aware of some studies that have said it hasn't quite achieved all the objectives that we were hoping, so it's a fair comment to make. As to whether I could comment on whether one breakfast cereal is 4 stars or 4.5 stars, I do understand how the system can be gamed depending on which of those 5 elements you highly rate or don't. And so in fact you may be getting a high star rating, but it's got a high sugar content, is maybe the point you're making. And so consumers presume they're getting a high quality food that may be doing well in the other 4 components but not well in sugar. So I take on board that it's not perfect, but I think it was a fair stake in the sand towards telling consumers how much sugar, which is particularly the topic of our discussion today, how much sugar is in the products.
Thank you. Any more questions? What year do you have?
Yeah, so Julianne, you've been part of government, although food is not necessarily your portfolio, but with this health star rating system, that's been going for 5 years, it's only on 25% of products, and it's on the more healthy products, and there's no evidence yet that it's really making a difference to consumer choices. I mean, would you consider this should be made compulsory? I understand from Dr. Reddy. that they'd stick with the voluntary one, but what about if Greens had a say in this?
Yeah, we support compulsory labelling, and I guess I do have some questions about whether the standard is totally accurate. We want to make sure that we fix it so that it's not saying unhealthy food is healthy. I think this isn't as bad in New Zealand, but certainly in the United States, what happens is the food and beverage industry ends up being very influential in these labelling systems to make sure that it works for them, it makes their products look good, and it's really important that we have a clear scientific standard for our labeling and that there's no room for lobbying to influence it.
Bailey, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, TOF also supports the package labelling becoming compulsory. I think it's clear that it won't work as effectively if only some products have this, and if the information is not clear and very easy to see. I don't really have much more to add. I agree with what Julie said around, Julia said around the, around who gets to write these standards, and I think, generally the top position is we should be listening to our scientific experts, and this is no exception. This is something where we have to listen to the scientists rather than the industry, and also rather than the politicians. They should be the one leading the charge there, and we'd support them to do that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on this particular policy? Yes, Karen.
Maybe just a comment. I suppose what we're recommending is labelling of sugar content in teaspoons on the front of pack.
Yeah.
And we've kind of think that the compulsory star rating system, it has too many flaws and it's not helpful. On top of that, it's not compulsory. So rather than looking at all those different components, and from what I understand, when it was brought in, it was the preferred option by industry. I think academics recommended the traffic light labelling system. However, the food star rating came in. So we think it's not helpful. Actually, it's adding confusion. And we think probably the most important variable we need to know about is sugar in products. And for drinks especially, because there can be up to 18 teaspoons in a 600 ml or 50 teaspoons in a 1.5. We need to know how many teaspoons of sugar are in that entire pack. So we're advocating for clear labelling of sugar content in teaspoons.
Any more comments or any more questions on this? Okay, man, we're moving very quickly. Very sharp responses here today. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, the final one, of course, this is the big one for today is the levy on sugary drinks. I think of what I'm hearing, this is the big one in terms of where you want to take this particular debate. So, Julianne.
Yes, we support a levy on sugary drinks, and I would go so far as to say that I will make it a priority in negotiations if we're in a position to form the next government, because there's been no action in the last term of government. The Labour Party Minister of Health held responsibility for this and declined to, agree with the Green Party that we should just go ahead and do it. Put out some sort of proposition to industry that they should do something to regulate themselves. Big surprise, they've done nothing. So, it makes sense to do this. It makes sense because we need revenue to invest in dental health and in other public health measures, and that's how we believe the revenue from it should be used. And I just want to take one step back and say, I think our response to COVID-19 has taught us so much about what we can achieve when we work together and we support each other, and the importance of putting public health and well-being front and center. And we just want to carry that on into the next government, but we have to be courageous, and we can't shy away from this idea that tax is unpopular. Look, the polls show a levy on sugary drinks is popular, but even if it wasn't popular, it's the right thing to do, and that's why we should do it.
So given it's the right thing to do, if you're in a position to form the next government, is this a deal breaker for you?
I can't. The Green Party has a lot of priorities, so I can't say that this would be the one deal breaker, but you can be assured that if the the more votes the Green Party gets, the more MPs we have, the more strength we have to negotiate with Labour, and this is something that I believe is really important, and we just can't, we're so far behind other countries on this now, it's getting a bit ridiculous. The Conservatives in the UK have a really great policy in this area. We've got all the evidence. And one thing that would really help is if we didn't have an opposition party that lied and scaremongered about policies like water only and tax all the time. It sets back the political debate big time. Well, when you're out there actively campaigning and scaremongering against taxes and against water only, it sets back the political debate. And the Conservatives in the UK have demonstrated that it is possible for a Conservative party to support these things. So that, anyway, it's okay, the National Party's getting less and less relevant. Sorry, Dr. Ritty. Thank you.
So top 3 then.
Top 3. It's in my policy manifesto, okay? I'm taking it in, I'm going to fight for it.
Okay, Shane, please.
So here's where we're going to disagree, and here's a clear policy choice here. National won't be supporting a sugar levy, and I'll tell you why. There's a number of reasons why. First of all, let's look at the evidence. We're not convinced that the evidence is as clear as we're being told here. If we look at the NZIER document from 2017, that clearly says and points out across a range of studies why the sugar tax is less effective than some might believe it is. There's issues with methodology. There's issues with compensatory sugar. So if you don't drink fizzy drinks, do you compensate with more sugar? Who's looking for that? Who's studying that? Who puts that into the equation? We know that sugar drinks also has the risk of being regressive, that it tends to affect those who are most vulnerable and less able to afford an alternative. I think if we also look at the sugar tax impact across the world, Chile took on a sugar tax in 2014. Turns out, if you look at Coca-Cola in New Zealand and Chile at the moment, Coca-Cola has a higher proportion of sugar in it in Chile than it does in New Zealand, and yet they have a sugar tax. Let's look at Mexico. Mexico brought in a sugar tax in 2014. Have a look at their tonic water. They have a higher proportion of sugar in tonic water than we do in New Zealand. So it is not at all clear to us or convincing that a sugar tax will work. Now I want to premise that by the 2018 UK levy on fizzy drinks, because I think that actually has had some impact. And we're watching that with great interest. In fact, it turns out 50% of the manufacturers reformulated. That's quite interesting. We're watching this. So I'm not saying this is a closed door to us, but we're watching the evidence that comes along. If you look at the impact of that today, they still have a higher proportion of sugar in Coca-Cola, the most used fizzy drink, than we do in New Zealand today. So I stand behind that position of we're watching. It's not a closed door position for us. Here today, on the evidence we see and understand, it's a no. It's a little bit more complicated because it's part of our overall policy pack. We're saying there'll be no levies or taxes in the first year, but it could be year 2 or year 3. I think the point I'm making is that we're watching and we're amenable to the new evidence. We're just not convinced here today is the decision to make today.
So if you're not completely close to it, what's the trigger point for you changing your position?
More scientific evidence, more robust scientific evidence, and independent authorities coming out saying, yes, here's the clear benefit of a levy or a sugar tax. How that looks, what is the tax, what is the time frame, details of that sort would persuade us and move us towards benefits if that's what the evidence shows.
Well, folks, any questions? Here's a challenge from Shane. Anyone want to ask a question? Yes, please.
So, I think one of the things that we've heard today is that one of the taxes that would be even more effective than a sugary drinks tax is a tax on all sugar. And the estimates we heard today was that a tax on sugar would reduce the health costs by $9,000 per person over their lifetime, which amounts to a savings of $36 billion. So that sounds to me, and that's ignoring any revenue that's generated by the tax. So that sounds to me like we have a choice of either imposing a tax on all sugar or choosing economic mismanagement. And I wonder if you might want to comment on
Sure, it wouldn't substantively change. Show me the evidence. Show me the data. So you've given me some facts and I accept that. Those are facts as you understand them. But where are the facts from the large studies, from the large methodologies? Where is that? And the second point I'd mention is, while we're focusing on sugar here today, let's also put it in the context of facts. So there are many other nutrients that we should take into account and decide which ones we want to triage as being the most important. I'm mindful of the fact that we're very sugar-centric here today, and that's a good thing. I get that. But there are other nutrients we should also look at taking into account if we're talking about population health over a period of time. And so what I'd say to you is the same as I said to the sugar tax. Show us the data, show us the evidence, persuade us with good studies that this is worth doing, and then, like I said, with the UK levy, we're interested in watching. It's not a closed door to us.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. Hypothetically, we can demonstrate a $36 billion saving from a sugar tax. Would you choose to impose that tax, or would you choose economic mismanagement?
Show me the detail, show me the data.
Assume I've shown you the data. Just
That's a hypothetical.
It is a hypothetical.
But what I will say, I'm very evidence-based. If you can show that to me and persuade me that it's good studies, I'm open to those discussions. Absolutely, it'll never be a closed door.
Open to the discussion is not the same as saying yes.
Open the discussions to progress towards. That's what it would be. Yep. Show me the data. I won't give you yes or no without the data.
Okay, it's a hypothetical. You've got the data. The data shows you that it's a $36 billion savings. Would you impose a sugar tax, yes or no?
I can't make that assumption without the hypothetical that you're proposing. You're saying if it shows the evidence.
Yes.
If it shows.
We want to know if it showed that, would you introduce a tax? It's a really easy question.
And the really easy answer is no. I will see that data first and make a decision based on it, and weigh up all the other objectives, all the other health objectives as well.
So I think we've got an answer here. I think the answer is that the representative from the National Party refuses to answer the question.
No.
Does anybody here think that he has answered the question?
Absolutely.
What you're
Does
seeing
anybody here
here,
think he hasn't answered the question?
Yeah. He has definitely not.
what you're seeing here is that we're very evidence-based. We're open to new evidence, and if you can present, or anyone can present that new evidence, we'll certainly take it into account.
I think that's a non-answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a heated one, wasn't it? Yeah, one. Are you asking for a different angle here, right?
No, I just have a comment. So I presented that the results of the study that he's referring to this morning. Unfortunately, I guess couldn't be here for that. I'm happy to send you the results. I imagine it won't make any difference because I feel there is overwhelming evidence from around the world and in multiple different forms that show that sugar food beverage taxes work. And I just don't buy the evidence. I have to feel like.
Well, what I've said to you, we'll take all evidence into account and weigh it up, and yes, I'd be more than happy, and thank you if you would.
So who makes the decision, Shane? Is it you or the panel?
It's made by caucus. The caucus would make that decision.
Okay. Ben, have you got further to add here, or I just say yes? Easier to say yes.
All right, well, I guess I'll start off by saying yes. Top's read of the evidence, and our policy committee has reviewed this evidence. In fact, they reviewed the evidence in 2017 and found more than enough evidence to say, yes, we would like to work towards a sugar tax. Top's position is that we prefer a sugar tax over all products, which does address the substitution that Dr. Reti mentioned, but we're absolutely happy to support a levy on sugary drinks in the interim, and that too is part of our policy. This has been our policy since 2017. I guess I would like to say I think that between TOP and the National Party we have a much more rigorous process for scientific evidence leading to policy. I think the National Party's process is fairly opaque, but it's easy to see that TOP is listening to scientists and is listening to the evidence, and if that's the kind of approach you would like to see taken to policy making in this country, then I think that's a great reason to vote TOP in this election. Thank you.
Okay, somebody has one last burning question or comment? Sorry.
In the UK, that they took the money from the levy to introduce George Osborne, and they advocated that in theory against the actual spending to educate schools. Do you think that might work in the New Zealand context? Using the money for benefits and earmarking in that way?
Well, all of the revenue we raise usually does go towards public benefit. So, all the taxes we raise do go to the health system and education and other things like that. But we had suggested in the Greens that it should be hypothecated for health, and particularly addressing health issues that are exacerbated by sugary drinks, like dental health or other types of public health promotion and education, like supporting water-only policies in schools campaign, or or other types of policies that are helping reduce obesity and their related health impacts.
TOP's position on what the money raised should be spent on is three things. One, lowering the cost of fruit and vegetables. Two, increasing funding to dental care. And three, reducing the cost of primary health care, so the cost of visiting GPs, which is another one of these sort of, that's another very low-hanging fruit when it comes to health spends we can make, which will result in a really big impact on the health of the nation.
It wouldn't raise money to substantially reduce the cost of primary care, but you could do some really targeted things like dental care and health promotion.
Yeah.
Yes, I think some of those funds run should clearly go back into education. I point out that in smoking that doesn't happen actually. Only a small proportion of the excise on cigarettes actually goes back to smoking prevention. That's a little bit of a broken precedence here at the moment, but I would support your contention that yes, clearly some of those funds raised should go back to prevent the initial problem. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, one more. Yep, back there.
I just have a tātou for tamariki. Me whakaroa ki tātou, koa e ware kei konei ngā tamariki. Āta kōrero. I would like to ask our tamariki, actually no, I'd like to ask you three. Can you please ask them what their whakaroa is on Levy? Would they like to do that? Ask them first.
Sure. And we heard some of the answers to your questions when it was put to the floor. Did you have any questions? And some of you answered magnificently. And so the question then we're asking to you is, do you think on sugar and on sugary drinks, fizzy drinks particularly, there should be a tax? That people should pay more if the sugar in a drink is the question that we're asking?
Maybe ask them on the water one first.
Okay, we're seeing a thumbs up to that.
Do we want to ask the question about the water and sugar?
Firstly, I just want to thank the students, Glenview, for coming and speaking to us and singing to us. I thought that was awesome, and it sounds like you're super onto it when it comes to policy. So how do you feel about water-only policies in schools, and do you think they should be extended to kids in sports clubs?
Yes, undecided no. Confirmed yes.
You asked a question about compulsory labelling, please.
All right, well, thank you for being here, children. I really appreciate you coming and giving us your thoughts. So my question to you is, do you support that on sugary drinks we should have a label which very clearly tells you how much sugar is inside them? Cool, thank you for your answer.
100% again. Let's give them a hand. Let's give the children a hand. Well, we've now done about exactly 34 minutes, so I think unless there's any more questions to ask our politicians, I really want to thank them for taking their time to be here, and really appreciate them taking their time, and also being out front about the questions and the responses. So please give them a hand and thank them very much.